In a very recent video that you guys seem to have liked, I've shared my personal picks of general classes and specs that are going to be my mains in Shadowlands, based on the information at hand currently, before the pre-patch, before Shadowlands launches, obviously. Today I'm doing the same for Ranged DPS, because I definitely will have one or a couple in Shadowlands and I'd like to talk to you about it. And yes, do let me know if you're interested in these kind of conversations and series, and I will do the same. I'll produce a similar video for melee DPS as well. Let's talk about ranged today. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My regulars would know how I play my classes, but for any of my new friends and supporters, I'll point out that I won't be trying to pick the class or spec that seems the best, being in some, I don't know, 1.5% of the topmost ones, seeming above the others on some theoretical DPS chart. That's for min-maxers and hardcore people, who I never judge, for the record, but that approach is definitely not my cup of tea, and all of that reminds me of some kind of a job, and I already have one. I'm a casual who tries to enjoy the game, encouraging you to do the same. So with that being said, let's take a look at the full list of our contenders today. That's quite a lot to pick from, and also we have one honorable mention, yep, one additional one, to the Ranged DPS spec that should have been made official years ago, but Blizzard is cruel sometimes and thinks that extra fun would be too much for us to handle. I guess they're just trying to be considerate or something? Yes, it's the Shockadin. I'll tell you right now that if a Shockadin was a real thing and we could actually queue into dungeons and LFR as a DPS in Shockadin sub-spec to Holy, presumably, main spec, it would have gone very far in my list. But let's talk about that in due course. I'll just put it out there for now. Getting straight to business here today, let's start going through the list and slowly getting rid of contenders that I'm actually not that interested in. The logic here is that I'll be first getting rid of those that I'm least interested in, eventually arriving at my top 3, so bear with me for all the truth to be revealed. One last thing to say here is that when I say I'm not interested in a class or spec, or that I think it's just not interesting or whatever, it's not me passing judgment on your choices, in case you happen to love that particular spec or are actually awesome at it. I'm just expressing my personal opinion here that reflects how I like to play my classes. You, however, are always welcome and encouraged to share your opinion in the comments below this video. Tell me, and most importantly the other viewers, what you like and what your preferences are like. This is what makes a community really alive, and what I love the most about growing this little club. So please subscribe, contribute if you haven't already, because that's very much appreciated and not taken for granted. We will start with looking at mages. I have no major interest in any of the mage specs. Yes, they are fun in their own way, I will definitely acknowledge that, but let's say Frost is mostly, in my eyes, it is mostly a PvP orientated crowd controller, and while it has a permanent pet, which is a very important factor to me, and is one of my favorite gameplay modes with a pet, it is not a tanking pet, and overall I was never able to personally squeeze enough of DPS, or fun for that matter, out of Frost to seriously consider playing it as one of my top 3 ranged DPS. Arcane is for what I would say gourmet players in the times of BFA and patch 8.3, so it's for people who I feel like they want to feel different or are simply sick of mainstream choices. So definitely, as I just said, no judgment there, my friends, because I am looking for very niche choices as well very often, so I get you. And I know that some people dish out fairly insane amounts of DPS as Arcane, almost absurd ones, but of all mage specs, Arcane plays the most like a static fragile turret, or turret, how do you pronounce the word turret? Anyway, let's not get pedantic here. That needs to manage its mana, its burn and conservation phases, focusing on their 3 or 4, I'll be generous here, button rotation. That's boring even for me. And that will tell you something, my ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching my videos for a while. Yes, I like a few button specs, but this is a bit too repetitive and boring even for me. Fire is the only mage spec that I actually enjoy to a relatively large extent. It dishes out very respectable DPS, even in my hands, feels quite awesome, sets the world on fire quite literally, and all that pyromaniac fun that's hard not to see as fun way of enjoying yourself in a game. But for a casual soloer, the class and its specs, including fire, feel squishy, lack general utility, don't have any self-heal, boo, from me personally, and the main fun of mages for a lazy person like me is that they can teleport all over the world instantly, which was very handy during the annoying legendary cloak quest errands from Rathian and Magni in 8.3. I can acknowledge that. But those times are behind us. We are facing the soloing adventures of Shadowlands, which remain largely unknown to me, so I need to have a class that is going to feel like I am safe, feel like I am definitely going to have fun, but that whatever comes, I can deal with it. Mages don't make me feel that way. Next on my list of removals is Elemental Shaman. If you've watched my relatively recent video of a full clear of a horrific vision of Ogrima in Elemental Shaman spec, you will know how scarred I still am by that experience. I really like how Shaman plays, generally Shaman class, and feels in a simplified Stormstrike enhancement build. And that's what I'll eventually play in Shadowlands, but definitely not Elemental. Elementals are flashy, well, somewhat fun, I guess. They received some class changes in Shadowlands, but I know less about them than I know about enhancement, because those were news I was consciously following. So yeah, guys and girls, I'm honestly just not interested in trying to get my lengthy casts off while a bunch of mobs of Shadowlands will be bashing on me. So, bye Elemental. Marksman hunters have never been my thing, so are listed here for completeness and fairness purposes. What? I am about to remove Marksman Hunter before Shadow Priest? I hear you yell at your screen? Yes, my friend, I actually find Shadow Priests, well, quite enjoyable, yeah, I do. While I can't say the same about Marksman spec, I'm sorry. It has its fun elements, as most of classes and specs have in World of Warcraft. And I already mentioned in my earlier spec review, in the context of the horrific visions, that Marksman can do the job. But all the channeled barrages and underpowered tanking pet companion simply just don't make it good enough to compete with what I actually have in my mind for my top 3. While we are talking about Shadow Priests, I wish I could take them at least into my top 5 maybe, because I do like their fantasy and how they play, but I don't like how underwhelming their performance feels in BFA patch 8.3, and I was very hopeful but have not heard anything good about the return of Devouring Plague spell in Shadowlands Alpha and Beta now at the moment of recording of this video. So I have to let you go, my purple misty friends. I hope it's not coming across cynical or whatever, as I truly enjoyed some of these specs that I'm removing right now, but once you try and especially kind of stick to your own rules of cutting through your collection of characters and semi-enjoyable specs, because they are all semi-enjoyable to me, and I'm an altoholic, you'll see that you'll have to make some hard choices like I'm making here in front of you in this video, if you are truly trying to free up the time for those classes that you're planning to focus on. So bye for now, Shadow Priests. I'll be anxiously awaiting your return in a patch or 2 of Shadowlands, hopefully. Now, on to one of my absolute favorite specs in the whole game, or at least until the recent times of patch 8.3 and what brought the perceived lacking capability inside of the horrific visions when I'm playing solo and at my item level, of course, compared to the other two specs. I'm talking about Demonology Warlocks. It is with a very sad heart that I'm going to remove them from my list, for now at least, just as I did with Shadow Priests, and I truly and honestly hope that they get rebalanced or simply become more interesting to a player who is after, the balance of fun and performance like me. At the moment, that's all I have to go by when I'm recording this video. I'm not in beta, as I said multiple times. Demonology is just not good enough to be in my personal top 3 specs for the time being. Oh, Shockadin is still there. So let's, I guess, address very quickly the elephant in the room formally. Am I keeping it or am I letting it go? I expect that I'll always keep my eyes on kind of the future of this sub-spec, potential sub-spec, as it's one of those fun things that have never happened but should have happened, as I said already. But I have to let it go for now, as it's not supported in the WoW UI and by the game itself, so I can't queue as a Shockadin DPS for LFR or LFG, and that would be a big hindrance for anyone who'd like to honestly compare this spec with the other contenders. It's just not even a hindrance, it just would be unfair. It's not an even playing field, so to speak. So in all fairness to the other specs in question, I have to let Shockadin drop off my list for now. So we have 4 contenders left. We're coming to the pointy end of it, so to speak. We have Affliction Warlock, we have Destro Warlock, we have Balanced Druid, and we have Beastmaster Hunter. Even though I did enjoy playing Destruction spec of the Warlock, as reported on very recently in the Horrific Visions, as always, as my kind of measuring stick of the content that is solo and casual friendly content right now in 8.3, I still don't think that long casting mage-like spells are in fact the core fantasy of the Warlock class. I am sorry. Especially in this weird no-pet Grimoire sacrifice based build that I tried lately and that seems to be working the best for the Destro as far as numbers are concerned, but it just doesn't feel right and it sort of threw me off it, to be completely honest with you, so sadly I have to let Destro go. It drops off my personal top 3. So final countdown, my friends. In the spot number 3 we have Beastmaster Hunter, without a doubt one of the beloved and the strongest soloists in the game, and lazy man's choice that I couldn't go ahead into Shadowlands without having them at least in my top 3, even though I say it's boring. It's just so reliable and it has not changed much. It stays boring, but it stays wonderful if I really just want to fall back onto something that I know is always going to be there for me and is going to fulfill its duties without... it won't depend on the weather, so to speak, using metaphors. Very, very boring though, largely unchanged in their design for Shadowlands as far as what I know from watching the videos of other channels about Alpha, Beta, which is why it only deserves the place number 3 in my opinion. Spot number 2 and the very close runner-up to today's champion is the Balanced Druid. Well done, Balanced Druids, my feathery friends. It's just a shame that they didn't quite make the first spot in my main class selection in the video where I was talking to you about my main class for Shadowlands, the kind of all-rounder, and neither they did for this supplementary Ranged DPS selection. It's sad, but it's not just quite there. I do love, as you know guys, I do love how druids play and how fun balance feels. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made it to the spot number 2 in my list. Let's just be honest, it's pretty high up there. But I believe that spot number 1 has to be taken by a class that, in addition to fun and power, brings one extra thing balance doesn't have, at least doesn't have it on a permanent basis. Yes, it's pets, it's a pet. Which brings us obviously to spot number 1 and our winner in my personal list of the most appealing ranged DPS classes and specs that I'll start Shadowlands adventures with. It's the Affliction Warlock. I'll be honest with you guys, if you haven't done such a progressive elimination list of options for yourself before, you might not believe me that the winner was actually not very clear to me as I started writing up these notes and thoughts that I turned into this video. It actually revealed itself progressively as I was talking to myself, writing down pros and cons, thinking about it a little bit more. This actually was a progressive exploration experience for me too. So the facts that come into focus when, I've gone through other classes and specs simply resulted in this overall winner in my mind, and I'm actually quite happy about it. So, very evident pros and some of the cons of the Affliction Warlock include very good fantasy, great fantasy. Being the commander of dark forces, demons, I personally very much love it. I was always attracted to it. I think Warlocks are carrying that flag for me very, very prominently. A lot of situational utility, fantastic utility spells that at least don't feel like they bloat the core DPS rotation for me, for my playstyle, and are there only when you need them. Yeah, they're fantastic. Plus additions of some new cool spells that I don't know enough about, which is why I'm not prominently putting them here in the list front and center for our review. Things like Malefic Rapture. Things like additional Covenant abilities that Warlocks apparently have, something like Soul Rot, I think it's called. So there are some things that are definitely very attractive and something for me to explore in Shadowlands with my pick of the ranged DPS of choice. Similar how I'll be doing for my overall all-rounder choice for Shadowlands, the DK. Play style of Affliction works for me. I dot things up, I drain some health and souls of the enemies and watch stuff die. Like, definitely thumbs up from me. Affliction still feels like it doesn't rely on as many mage-like cast time-based spells. It also most prominently, and this is what sort of carried it over the line as the winner compared to other classes, it has access to a whole bunch of demons and tanky ones as well. So that is fantastic. Lots of self-sustain, shielding, self-healing, and you know me, if you've been one of my regulars, you know that that's what I rate very, very highly for myself personally. And look, there is also, I would dare say, with this whole Grimoire of Sacrifice, you can run with a pet, you can run without a pet, you can rely on Shadow Bolt build, you can rely more on Drain Soul build, so there is some variety, and I'm not going to say it has sub-specs, but it has a sub-spec feel. You could have a sub-spec feel in Affliction, which, it is a pro, and it gives a little nice kind of option, so that you could, I guess, change your playstyle a little bit while still being an Affliction Warlock. So that is definitely, these are all strong pros that I see without making much effort here. Cons are not too many and include things that will seem like I'm being a bit pedantic here, but I truly believe when I say that it is annoying that in a build, in a class that relies on a tanky pet that needs to be healed occasionally, we need to channel the healing spell. It's a channeled healing spell. Rather than just needing to press a button and put a heal over time effect on the pet like Beastmasters do and forget about it and continue running around dotting things up. It's been one of my issues with Warlock pet management for years now, and I know it's very unlikely to change, but it is a con. I would have loved to be able to, because it's a pet-based class, I don't want to channel my health as a stream to heal my tanky pet. I want to do, at the very least, the same thing as Beastmasters do, and just throw a, healing over time effect on them, and that's it. Then, core rotation spells, some of the staple kind of classic Warlock favorites like Shadow Bolt, are, at least to me, feeling a bit out of place in BFA. The the way Shadow Bolt works, for example, and Nightfall works, and all those kind of things work, just doesn't seem as competitive and as appealing as gameplay or in terms of performance and other stuff when you compare it to other ways to play Affliction. So hopefully it will get more streamlined rather than bloated further by Brian Holinka, who is going to be the unpruner. Like, my god, that still makes me so worried for Shadowlands. But let's hope it gets streamlined a little bit more, and let's hope we get some more fun, cool builds where for Affliction specifically that feel like they belong, yeah, that don't feel like they're out of place. Finally, and quite importantly, but obviously not importantly enough for me to consider a different ranged DPS class for spot number 1, is inability of Affliction Warlocks to be Draenei. Yep, I know Draenei are all about fluff and light as a race, but I love the models, the goats, and I believe that there could have been an offshoot of Eredar goats, maybe, just like Blizzard did for Magha orcs, to bring an awesome allied race that would allow Draenei model lovers like me to have basically a Draenei looking warlock, except possibly even cooler if there were different colors and, you know, I don't know, horn types of Eredar. So I have no idea why they didn't consider it. An ideal time for that has passed, obviously, because that would have been during Legion expansion. How well? I'll live with the current options, but that is a con. I have to say that is a con. And that's it for today, my friends. So this is my list, this is my top 3, this is my currently final choice if I was to put aside my DK and take a break and go range DPS stuff, or rely on a pet, or just simply change the perspective of a casual player and play where the enemies are kept at a bit of a distance as opposed to in my face, which I think is a healthy change of gameplay, by the way, especially for casuals who try to not burn out, who try to shift their perspectives a little bit. I'm very happy with my choice. I haven't heard anything crazily contradictory from Shadowlands beta that would say, look, this is just really underperforming spec, blah blah blah. So I do think that that will probably come true, as in these are good choices that will work well in Shadowlands. Yet of course I have to keep repeating this, and I'm already, trust me, I'm sick of my own voice repeating this, but I have to for my new viewers. I am not in beta, guys. I'm not in beta. I don't have proof of this, and I'm going off what I know about the classes, my personal feel, and what I heard, the limited amount of information available from what I heard about the classes in Shadowlands. Let me know in the comments down below, what are your choices? Are any of your ranged DPS choices in my list? I know my fire mages, I already had a few people comment on some previous videos about how they basically disagree with my position on fire mages, and they're very passionate about this. Polite though, so thank you guys, I appreciate that. I hope you understand that I am also not judging your choice, and I never pretend. People seem to somehow, with all this being said, they seem to somehow bypass the fact that I always lead with saying, not an expert, I'm just a casual player who tries to have fun and encourages you to do the same. So in my opinion, fire mages are not for me. Mages are generally not for me, even though I say they are fun, they're cool. But do let me know again how you feel about this. Not talking just about mages, I'm just using it as an example of some passionate crowd of mine, of people who were talking about mages to me lately, so that's fresh on my mind. Let me also know, do you still enjoy this type of narratives, this type of countdown lists? And as I said at the beginning, I am very seriously considering to, you know, as a completionist in me, plus to make sure that you guys are having fun as well on this channel, I am considering to compile similar list and my opinions on melee DPS. Melee DPS. I led with saying to you guys, I'm mostly a tank. I am not primarily playing DPS, which is why they're not my mains. That's why we had a separate video about this. And yes, of course, my choice, my ultimate choice is Blood Decay or Unholy Decay, which is DPS, yes. But if we were to compile a similar list, I have other opinions on other purely DPS classes, purely DPS, who I would choose to DPS LFR with, or occasional Mythic Plus with. If you'd like to hear my opinions on this, please don't be shy, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be more than happy to put together a similar narrative for you guys. And please subscribe to show your support. That's ultimately what shows me your support. I super appreciate this. I don't take it for granted. And that is what tells me that you want more of this type of content. Yeah? All right, enough said. Thank you very much for tuning in today, and I'll be talking to you again in a couple of days' time. See you later. Bye.